Ambedkar was waiting for a visa all his life, a visa to enter his own country. Not a literal visa, of course, but a symbolic one. A visa into dignity and equality in a land he was born into, lived in, and transformed. Ambedkar spent his entire life in a paradox. The title of his lesser-known autobiographical text, Waiting for a Visa, captures this irony with brutal precision. How could a man who lived, breathed, and shaped modern India feel like an outsider in his own land? Ambedkar was born in 1891 in the town of Mahao in Indore, Madhya Pradesh. He was the son of a Mahar Subedar, a non-commissioned officer in the British Army. The Mahar caste was historically considered untouchable or Dalit. This child, scrabbling in the dust of Mahar, went on to become the first law minister of an independent India, a constitutional visionary and the fiercest critique of caste. But one thing remained constant in Ambedkar's life: the weight of his Dalit identity and the unrelenting discrimination that followed. Waiting for a Visa was written between 1935 and 1936, not merely as a memoir, but as a testimony, a public document on the daily humiliation suffered by Dalits in India. It is a collection of 6 episodes from his life. The text does not just tell Ambedkar's story, it offers a mirror to a society fractured by caste. In the introduction, Ambedkar directly addresses foreign readers. He knew that to explain the horror of untouchability, he would have to cross not just physical borders but cognitive ones, those of disbelief, denial, and detachment. Ambedkar understood his untouchability from childhood. He was made to sit apart in school, bring his own gunny sack to sit on. He had to wait for a peon to open the water tap because he could not touch it himself. The phrase, "no peon, no water" in the memoir captures the indignity embedded in his routine. At home too, the caste system left its mark. His sister washed the family's clothes because no washerman would touch them. His elder sister, not a barber by choice or training, learned to cut hair out of necessity. These were not just acts of care, they were acts of resistance against an oppressive system. At just 9 years old, Ambedkar set out on a journey with his siblings to reunite with their father. But the journey to Koregaon gave him a shock that he had never received before, and it made him think about untouchability like never before. It became a lesson in cruelty. No bullock cart driver, no passerby, no innkeeper helped them because they were untouchables. The children wandered exhausted and hungry, not for lack of means, but because caste denied them even the right to kindness. Despite the discrimination, he became one of the first untouchables ever to enter an Indian college. In 1912, he graduated with a BA from Elphinstone College, Bombay. The next year, he was awarded a scholarship by Maharaja of Baroda to study in Columbia University, New York, making him one of the earliest students to study in the United States. When Ambedkar returned to India in 1918, fresh from Columbia, he was eager to serve. Appointed to a position in Baroda, he arrived with hope but quickly faced the harsh reality of caste. No hotel would offer him a room. Despite his qualification, he was refused accommodation simply because he was a Dalit. The discrimination was quiet but unrelenting. His masquerade as a Parsi did not last long. Once discovered, he was asked to leave. Eventually, Ambedkar had no choice but to leave Baroda. It was a clear reminder that in India, caste could still override merit, and education was no shield against exclusion. In 1918, he became a professor at the prestigious Sydenham College. In 1920, he went to London to study law at Gray's Inn and the London School of Economics. The same year, he started a magazine, Mook Nayak, meaning silent leader. After his return, he started practicing law at the Bombay High Court and launched Society for the Welfare of the Depressed. One of the most crucial acts of his anti-caste movement was when he led historic Mahad Satyagraha in 1927, a political mass action to drink from a public water tank in Maharashtra. This call is considered a foundational event of the Dalit movement marking the community's collective rejection of the caste system and assertion of human right. That same year, Ambedkar also publicly burnt the Manusmriti, an ancient Hindu text he saw as the foundation of caste oppression. The burning was a strong statement against the centuries-old discrimination and the repression faced by the Dalits. In 1936, he wrote his magnum opus Annihilation of Caste. In the essay, Ambedkar criticized the Hindu religion, its caste system, and its religious texts, which are male-dominant and spreading hatred and suppression of female interest. He argued that caste is a divisive force, creating a hierarchy that impedes social cohesion. To annihilate caste, symbolic gestures like intercaste dining or marriage would not suffice. What was needed was to destroy the religious notions upon which caste is founded. When Ambedkar became the first law minister and the chair of Constitution Drafting Committee, he attempted to reform Hindu personal laws through the Hindu Code Bill. The bill addressed the matters of marriage, inheritance, and adoption. The bill faced massive backlash from Parliament and outside, particularly from Rajendra Prasad and the Hindu Mahasabha leader Shyama P. Mukherjee. Frustrated by this, he resigned in 1951. The figure of Ambedkar has become a radical and animate presence, a silent witness to promises still unfulfilled. The question of caste raised by Ambedkar is still one of the pressing questions haunting India.
That caste adapted into this more subtle forms. And if someone is not letting you access a public place, maybe we can go in front of that and protest. We can show some placards. But the caste is like nowadays operating in more subtle ways, and it's hiding in plain sight nowadays. And at the places where this is not so subtle, it's very obvious, like what happened in Ernakulam a few years ago in Kerala. There was this wall built in a public property that some Dalit families were not allowed to access that place, and there was this movement. They broke the walls down. They pulled the walls down. So if something is happening in that sort of way, we can always protest. But casteism has, at large scale, adapted to this more subtler forms, and so it's recognizing it is a task in itself. Especially when I say these things are casteist, these things are casteist, but people have a very hard time digesting that, because people are like taught to perceive caste as something in the bygone generation, or it's a thing of past. So when I say this thing is rooted in casteism, people have a hard time swallowing that pill. So it's moving in a very subtle way. So, and the casteism in people, we find it as a hate against reservation. But actually what they're hating is that Dalit students are accessing universities, higher education. That's actually what they're hating. But the hate is coming forward as a hate towards reservation. And then when we talk about intercaste marriages, people would defend it, saying people would oppose intercaste marriages, saying tradition, culture, heritage, and all this stuff. So people have came up with more and more justifications for caste. I think that's why this mass movement or mobilization is not happening, because identifying caste is a task in itself. Where caste is operating, it's operating in plain sight. It's hiding behind tradition. It's hiding behind proxy hate. So, yeah, that's the thing.
Filmmaker Anurag Kashyap recently pointed out controversy around a biopic on Savitribai Phule. He wrote, "During the screening of Dhadak 2, the censor board told us that Modi has eradicated the caste system in India. On the same ground, Santosh, another film, could not be released either. If there is no caste system, why did Jyotiba Phule and Savitribai exist?" The Indian Constitution bans caste-based discrimination, but legal declarations do not automatically erase centuries of hierarchy. The National Dalit Watch and the reports by NCDHR continues to highlight how discrimination has evolved. As per Ministry of Social Justice and Empowerment, more than 185,000 cases of caste-based violence have been filed in Indian courts between 2020 to 2022.
After, say, for example, like after Ambedkar, there was a huge gap in resisting caste and caste violence. And then there has to be a moment that has to occur in the late 80s or 90s in the context of the Ambedkar centenary. Then there evolved a mass political, organizations, political movements, social movements. It was but such kind of things are not very much visible, and that it is not reaching out to people now. So this is one part. The other part is how the state is actually reacting to these cases. Obviously, state has a role in aggravating these kinds of violence and humiliations. These are all sorts of caste-related, discriminations, and also they can also, resist. They can also kind of put forth, or they can put in place the laws or they can make sure that whether law is working out for people, law is actually into place. But I would say that state is a kind of a thing that can, maybe empowerment may be possible through state, if not 100%, at least some level. Through state, empowerment may be possible, but emancipation has to happen through organizing people, through resisting caste in its own way, through mobilizing people basically. So we have to find ways to emancipate ourselves, not just Dalits but any oppressed communities. The state would never emancipate oppressed communities, marginalized communities. They have to find ways of how to emancipate one's own self or community.
Ambedkar's question, is there a place for Dalit in this country, still echoes. His life, his protest, his scholarship, and his pain stitched into texts like Waiting for Visa are more relevant than ever, because the visa he was waiting for is still pending.